Hello everyone, today we're going to look at box plots. So a box plot is a graphical representation of the measures of location that we looked at earlier. There are two types. One shows potential outliers and the other does not. For both types, we start with what's called the 5-number summary. And the 5-number summary is the minimum, Q1, Q2, Q3, and the maximum. So type 1 does not show potential outliers, and here's an example of a box plot. We have a number line at the bottom, so we have just a normal everyday number line, and then we have lines here at the minimums and maximums, and then we have a rectangle or a box around from Q1 to Q3 and a line in the middle at Q2. So here is my box for my box plot. And a line at Q2. Typically, the things at the top aren't labeled, these guys, and you'll just see the number line, so you'll have to know that this is Q3, this is Q1, this is Q2, this is the maximum, and this is the minimum. But this is just how we represent those measures of location. Type 2 does show potential outliers. So the box is the same, it's still, the ends are Q1 and Q3, there's still a line at Q2, but the lines outside of the box are a little different. So we have here, again, our box with the Q1, Q2, and Q3, and then we have what are typically called the whiskers. The whiskers don't extend to the minimum and maximum anymore, they extend to what are called adjacent values. And adjacent values are the minimum and maximum values inside that range that showed what was not an outlier. So that Q1 minus 1.5 IQR to Q3 plus 1.5 IQR. So they're basically the lowest and highest non-outlier values. So in this case, the minimum non-outlier is 22, the maximum non-outlier is 30. If there are points outside of these, if there are potential outliers, then they're generally shown with an asterisk. So we've got one here, that's the minimum, happens to be a potential outlier. The maximum also happens to be a potential outlier. And there's also a third potential outlier here. So again, the whiskers extend to the lowest and highest non-potential outlier values. And then any potential outliers are denoted by asterisks. So we're going to do an example of creating one from the beginning. So create both types of box plots with the following data. So I have a whole bunch of numbers. I've already put them into order for us. The minimum, of course, for some reason I wrote 24. That's obviously not true. The minimum is 2. Q2, remember, to find that, we split the data in half. There are 15 points, so the middle is this 6 right here, so that is Q2. And again, that's just a 2. So here's the middle. To find Q1, we look at the middle of the remaining numbers below it. There are 7 of them, and the middle is this 4 right here. So Q1 is 4. To find Q3, again, here is the median. The middle of the remaining numbers bigger than Q2 is 8. So Q3 is 8. The maximum is 15. All right, the minimum and the maximum are the easiest ones to find. The IQR is next. Remember, the IQR is the Q3 minus Q1, so 8 minus 4 gives us the IQR, which is 4. The next thing we have to find, if we're going to do the second type of box plot, is that range that will tell us whether or not we have potential outliers. So that range, remember, is Q1 minus 1.5 IQR up to Q3 plus 1.5 IQR. So if I take Q1, which is 4, and I subtract 1.5 times 4, I get -2. if I take Q3, which is 8, and I add to it 1.5 times 4, I get 14. So my range is -2 to 14. So I look at my numbers and I say, are there any numbers outside of this range? Are there any potential outliers? And I see yes. 15 is a potential outlier. And then, again, if I'm doing the second type of box plot, I need to find my adjacent values. So again, my adjacent values are the lowest and highest numbers that are inside this range. The lowest number inside the range, it happens to be my minimum too. There are no potential outliers on the lower half of my data set. The adjacent value and the upper end, the highest value that's not a potential outlier, is my 9. So my adjacent values are 2 and 9. So when I create the box plots, I have 2 of them. This is type 1 up here that doesn't involve the potential outliers. So we have our whiskers are at the minimum and the maximum. And then again, the box is the Q1 to Q3 with a line through Q2. So for both of them, this part is the same. That doesn't change. For the second type, type 2, we have to be aware of any outliers. So there aren't any outliers, again, on the lower half. So my whisker goes to my minimum. But on the upper end, there is a potential outlier, and that was the 15, the maximum. So that gets written with an asterisk, and my whisker ends at my higher adjacent value, which remember before we said was 9. Okay, so this is a really nice picture. Excel will create a box plot for you, and we'll talk about that in class. So go through the book, try out the homework problems, and let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.